Going here, both of those links are to the documents that I'm going to be using today to present. One, you'll see them on the screen, but if you want access to them later on to go back, you're free to visit them and or make a copy of them and use it if there's any Spanish teachers out there or anyone wants a format for something, or to share them with other people. So like Alan said, I'm going to talk to you about how can you take your traditional lessons that you already have or that you've already been teaching and turn them into digital learning lessons. Oftentimes when we're told, well, you have to teach online, when the kids aren't in front of you, it feels like everything's going to change. And in the foreign language department at my school, we actually saw that we had to change, of course, right? They're not there to ask questions consistently while they're working. But we did find that the way we had set up our curriculum kind of lended to being able to transform these easily. We didn't find a whole lot of change from the activities we were doing, just a little bit for how we did them. And well, I would say many times we ended up using the same lesson because our lessons were all already organized in a digital way using Google Docs. We were able to add, take away, and just edit them a little bit and still post them on Google Classroom for the students to do on their own, and then meet in tutoring hours or office hours or whatever you wanted to call it, or a class meeting synchronously in Google Meet to answer questions and or emphasize some of the parts of that lesson. So I thought maybe some people hadn't thought of that or feel like they need to do something different from the beginning. So I'm going to show you what we do. But before I show you what we do, I put 3 questions up in this document. What do your classroom lessons look like? And what are the components of your lessons? If you want to share, you can go to the chat and type them out. How do you start a lesson? What would you call that? What's the next step? What's that called? Or the last step. I think we can all assume that everyone would write assessment. And all of those may have different names depending on where you went to school, when you went to school, what school you teach at, and what kind of pedagogy you follow, maybe what the best practices are of your school and or district. But essentially, we're doing the same thing, maybe rearranging a little bit. Maybe we've heard, chunking and things like that. Well, we're being asked to do that digitally as well, but they're not calling it chunking anymore. They're calling it 3 to 4 minute videos. Well, that's chunking and presenting information. So how can you take some of the traditional parts to your lessons and transfer them to a digital or hybrid learning? I'm sure you've thought about that many times, but often we think, well, bell work's out, or brainstorming's out, or activating prior knowledge is out, because those are often very collaborative conversations that you can't always have before you start that week's lesson or that day's lesson, or the students before they access what they're going to do on Google Classroom or Schoolology. I have a problem with that word for some reason. So how can we transfer these? And I'm going to show you how we do that. Lastly then, what platforms or digital programs can you use to complete some of these steps when you're not in-person learning? So that's the third part to this Zoom today, or this webinar. I'm going to show you some platforms and programs that we've used. I'm going to give you a little bit of a tutorial on them, or show you an example, and then give you more resources to access if you'd like to learn more. I also believe that Connor tomorrow is going to talk more in depth about many of them. And I actually think he's here today. So maybe there's some holes that he can, if you guys have further questions and we run out of time, things that maybe you might want to take note of and add. So we'll see. But that's the plan for the day. So those are our objectives, our learning targets per se. And I see that nobody wrote that the learning target was the way they started their class. bad, right? So before we look at a lesson, I do want to talk about the difference between synchronous and asynchronous learning. If you're not sure what that means, synchronous, we know the word, right? It means at the same time. So what we're doing is synchronous. Now, asynchronous would be the people who are going to watch this webinar recorded. So any learning that the students are doing on their own, but that was planned and organized by the teacher, and where they would get feedback. Now, this would be a poor example because I won't be able to give you any feedback on your understanding of the recording, but I can do that synchronously right now. Now, do we have a platform different to this, where maybe I posted this video in Google Classroom and you watched it, and then you commented on what you took away from it? Well, then you did that asynchronously, and same, I'm going to go behind you and I'm going to read what you've written, and I'm going to give you some kind of feedback. So that's more asynchronous learning. And why is that important? I think that there's a lot of ways to deal with or look at online learning. Some people believe synchronous learning is what is most valuable, and that asynchronous is, it's the negative term, but lazy, or the students aren't really being followed, or it's easy to post things and just leave it. Well, we all know as educators, we're not just posting and leaving it. We're going back to, and the feedback and the conversation that ensues afterwards is very important. And asynchronous learning sometimes is better for certain learners. So I'm not here to talk necessarily about the pedagogy of both of those types of learning. However, I want you to think about, if you're going to be face-to-face or blended or hybrid, or fully digital or fully distanced, how those are really similar still because of the physical distance we have to have between the students and between the students and ourselves. So we have this physical gap that we have to close. And although we're going to be together, and we have this great opportunity for synchronous learning in a face-to-face situation, you still have a lot of components that you have to do asynchronously, because students cannot work in groups, for example, physically, but they can digitally. So I try to make a lesson, or try to give you one of my lessons and tailor a little bit. I am actually going to do this lesson on like the second day of school. I tried to give you something that you could do, whether you're face-to-face, blended, or fully digital. It's still using a lot of online programs, but it doesn't mean you can't use those when you're face-to-face. Let's see. Okay. So our department started reorganizing our curriculum to provide more asynchronous learning even in the classroom, so that students were able to listen to videos at their own pace. With headphones plugged into their computer, they could listen to a native speaker explain their likes and dislikes and complete an activity with them. Some students need to listen to it 2 or 3 times and they have a greater understanding. Others, it takes a little bit more time. It also allowed students to go back to these lessons after school, kind of as their homework. If they weren't able to finish it in class, then they were encouraged to go back to it and complete the activity. Each of these learning experiences led up then to forms of assessment. So students knew, some of them after their first assessment, but they knew that I need to do these lessons and do them with as much engagement as I can possibly give them, so that I'm ready for that assessment then. And it helped us pace a little bit better for every student. And what we ended up finding was that we were kind of turning the classroom and homework into a flipped classroom, and with a lot of project-based or performance tasks. Again, I'm not talking about the pedagogy of that, nor the 5 E's of distance learning lesson development that you find, or I'm sorry, digital lesson development that you find on the screen right now. But I just want you to have a little bit of background before we look at the lesson I'm going to show you, so that you can understand the connections to what your steps of a lesson look like versus what ours do. There is more information about these below if you're interested in them. A couple links, I didn't want to overwhelm you. This is something that is widely used. a lot in science, because you'll see just by the names of the lesson components, and in other, you know, content areas. But you can look at those links later on if you're interested. This chart here now shows us the lesson elements being named as engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. I'm sure we can easily, as experienced educators, rename those to evaluate to assessment, for example, engage to access prior knowledge. And so what does it look like? Well, brainstorm, ask questions, research, watch videos is exploring. Explaining, well, it's instruction, modeling, scaffolding. Elaborating, where you're making connections or you're learning to new or novel situations. You want to explain how, or students are creating. And then evaluate is looking at what they've learned. This is just a short list of what these words mean. But most importantly, so as you're listening to me describe these, I'm sure you can see your own lessons matching to these E's. You can see what the parts are that you were thinking of when I asked you to earlier, and match them to the E's. Now, why do I want you to do that? Because I have a list of tools that you can use to change that from either synchronous learning or in person to a digital tool, whether that's synchronous or asynchronous. Many of these you've heard before, Padlet and Google Classroom questions. You'll notice that some of them are blue and they have links, some of them are not. Like Insert Learning, I don't have any experience with that. So I'm not going to try to find good resources for you when I don't actually know how to use it myself. However, if any of you in the Zoom do have experience with any of these, as you look at them, feel free to put a link in the chat and I'll add it to this document so that everyone has some resources more resources, right? We all know how to get to YouTube and look up a name of something, but we don't know how to pick the best video or the best explanation. So we'll get some sources from experts out there, and I'll link them in here after we conclude the Zoom. So I'm going to talk about some of these today, mostly the ones that are in blue. Quizlet, Flipgrid. I was going to talk about Edpuzzle, but I found that it didn't really fit in this lesson. I will talk about it briefly for you, and this resource is really great. We'll talk briefly about Screencastify as well, and using Google Classroom Question. Padlet being another option for using Question. Okay, let's see, tools, lesson. Okay, here we go. So finally, here's the second link that I gave you, which is, oh, I'm sorry, really quick, before I move on. At the bottom of this document, there is an other tips for teaching and technology section. These are things that I've just kind of accumulated over time and shared with my teachers at my school. I hear, where's the link? It should be in the chat, but maybe for those who joined afterwards, you can't see it. I will copy it and paste it again for everyone. And you can see me doing that, so hopefully it works there. Oh, there we go. We got a thanks. All right, great. So these are just some tips. Some of these are silly things that maybe you know. Some of sounds like we have maybe someone who has that muted. If you could, that would be great. We're getting a little interference. Just things, how to screenshot. Sometimes you want to use something from a website with the kids and you don't want to have to worry about saving the picture. Well, just screenshot it. Now, these are mostly with a Chromebook. It's a new fad. Hopefully many of you are using them because they are really easy and user-friendly. If you don't use a Chromebook though, and you'd like a little bit of a translation for how to do some of these without a Chromebook, you can either put your questions in the chat and I'll take down your name, or send your email in the chat and I'll email you some translations, I guess, of how to do this. Or maybe towards the end we can talk more. But anyways, there's a lot of them. And then lastly, there's a link, a little bit discussion about this movement in technology and teaching called hyperdocs. Many of you have probably heard about it. What I'm going to show you today might look very similar to hyperdocs. It does not follow the exact, I don't know, pedagogy of a hyperdoc or the exact plan. Specifically, it lacks, what we're going to look at today lacks design and color from a hyperdoc. For me, that's very advanced. So that was another reason I thought to do this presentation, because why can't we just use Microsoft or Google Docs or Microsoft Word as we know how to use them, maybe adding some color to titles or bold or italics, but, and then later on we can add the color. I think hyperdocs feel a little overwhelming to a new user. Maybe there are people who don't know how to link anything in a document. That's big if you're trying to use a hyperdoc or trying to understand one. And then, but you don't know how to link a URL. So I'm going to go over that a little bit today too. I just wanted to put it in there and let you know that some of you who are a little bit more advanced, you may want to check that out. I will admit I forgot to link the resource. So we'll see if at the end I can solve that. If not, after we're done, I will. Okay, so our lesson for today is ¿Quién es mi profesora? And that means in Spanish, who is my teacher? We're using this in a Spanish 2 classroom. It is an introduction to the course and a review of Spanish 1. Not a full review. We don't do full course reviews, but we pick and choose what's important and what we want them to focus on. In the Spanish 1 curriculum, we talk a lot about how to introduce yourself and how to engage with other people. So I put some comments over here on the right, and I'm going to read from some of them, and they're also there for you. And again, it's when you're doing a digital lesson or when you're using technology, sometimes we feel the need to teach the students how to use the technology before the lesson. And we end up getting bogged down in an entire class period where we're taking 20 minutes to show tips really for how to use a technology. But by the time we get to the lesson, the students have learned 3 or 4 different things and they've already forgotten how to use them. I like to create lessons where we complete both of those objectives. We start with the content. So this one is to help them review from last year and to get to know each other and me. Little icebreaker, also get to know your teacher and help review content. There's also a technology aspect. Most of our lessons have something technology related. And we're reviewing or learning, depending on the student or the course, how to use certain programs and applications for learning that we use all year long and where to find them in Google Classroom. So when you see GC, that's my acronym, or everyone's, right? I don't separate them to save time, just like I said. Instead of 2 or 3 lessons, you have 1. It'll take longer, but it's all incorporated and the students are using it, the technology, directly after they learn it. If they learn something and then use it later, we know how it goes. They like to forget, right? But if they apply right away, it's generally stays. So let's see. Over here, my comment on instrucciones is this is prepared as an asynchronous lesson, but again, you could complete it through Google Meet, where students open this document and work on it on their computers as you help them and or instruct them as they work on it. If you did that, then you could use the chat as we're using for part B. And when we get to part B, I'll remind you of that. And then in part C, you wouldn't have to use a pre-recorded video that I've made for this lesson. So my first section here, well, of course we have an objective, right? This is review and remember vocabulary from last year to describe, sorry, I have a fly in my head, to describe people and various programs and applications to learn online. So we always start again with an objective. It's a written objective. If you're teaching asynchronously, they have that objective. We know they may skip it, right? But if there's an instructions video that goes along with it, you of course can start each one of those by stating the objective. Oh, and we made a title here, not just to get to know my teacher, but what are we all like, which lends them to know that they're going to be describing themselves as well. So what vocabulary do you recall from last year? Well, help, I don't remember anything. If I'm not with them, it's hard for them to go, well, yeah, I remember this, this, and this. So I've given them instructions. Go to your Google Classroom from last year for inspiration, and I told them how to get there. If we were in person and I wanted to engage them in the topic, so over here in the comment again, I've labeled this as the part of my lesson. I'm engaging them. If I were to do this in class, I would probably start a chart on the board and take volunteers. Who remembers what? Or ask them to look around the classroom and tell me what they remember. But I can't do that if I'm not in front of them for this part of the lesson. And so there's always something else you can do. It also engages them even further, I think, when they have to think about it for themselves and they have to make a list. So here is their first list. I've asked them to do at least 5 words or phrases, but encouraging them to add more bullets and teaching them how to do that. By enter after your text in the last bullet to add more words. And I've encouraged them to think about what were you able to do in Spanish last year. They'll come up with a few words, surely. Maybe not the ones we hope for. It'll probably be things like book or student, right? They're likely not to come up with the adjectives that we really want them to remember. So I'm going to later then have them explore more vocabulary. And there are instructions for how to use tables like this one that I've made here with Español and Inglés in the tips. In Google Docs or Microsoft Word, tables are your friend for organizing. If anyone's ever tried to make a long line and have the students fill it in a printed worksheet, it's great, but not for electronic. So we use tables. So B, now we're going to explore. I'm going to have the students share their words and phrases with the class in the comment section for this assignment in Google Classroom. So I'm going to show you what that looks like here. I'm telling them as new submissions appear on Classroom, add the new words or phrases to your personal list in part A. To add more bullets, again, teaching them the technology of how to manipulate the document. And this is the part of explore. Now, if you're fluent in Google Classroom, you know that you can turn off class comments for students. You can, if you do that because they're silly and they like to post weird things instead of their work, you can just create a Google question separate from the assignment and students can post there, or you can use what I described as Padlet in the links in the other document, which is a great resource for crowdsourcing, and that's kind of the new term for brainstorming together. Okay, so let's go to Google Classroom and see how all of this began. You're like, well, this is a nice document, but maybe some of you don't know how I got this to the students. So let's give it a second here. So here is my page for Spanish 2 for Google Classroom. You'll see that there's some grayscale names and there's some bold ones. These are just saved as drafts. I haven't posted them yet. So in the classwork tab, I'm going to scroll down past my resources and links. We'll go to those later. And for week 1, these are the dates for my class this year. The activity that we're going to do is ¿Quién es tu profesora? So when we click on it, it shows the instructions and the document. When I created this assignment, I chose the option to make a copy of this document, which we were just looking at, for all of the students. That's where they're going to type. And when it does that, when they open this document that we've been looking at, next to the title up here, their name will appear. So you still have your template and they have their own work. I can see then when they turn it in, which this isn't the real due date of September 2nd, but I've given them that due date. And I can see when they've turned it in or not, and then I can look at everyone's work together. Again, if you're not really fluent in how Google Classroom works, but this all sounds really nice, I think that Connor's going to talk more about this tomorrow, and or you can go to a video I'm going to show you a little bit later that gives you some more information, and or look it up on YouTube. There's a lot of people who do really great videos. Okay, so when let's see, gotta give me a second to get to the next page here. When the student opens the assignment fully, there's a section called class comments, and this is where they would type in some of their words. So they would type in, I don't know, libro, book, estudiante, student, and they would all see each other's comments come in once they send them. That's how I'm going to have them crowdsource. Also, why do it there? It's there forever. If they're preparing for an assessment later, they can go back to the class comments, or they can go back to their assignment, which I encourage. Of course, as we know, they don't all do that. But when they're going back to review, they can see, oh yeah, we talked about all of these. I didn't write them all down, but here they are. My classmates did. Also note, if you have just a few silly students, you can mute them. You can take away their privilege to posting comments. And you can do that, I think, in the settings within the people's tab. If you go, I'm not going to show you exactly how to do it, but I got to get back to the right page. In the people tab here at the top, their names will appear and you can mute them. So that's how they're going to share their vocabulary words that they would normally share in person. They'll share them there. Now, I might do this although my school is going back face-to-face for right now, at least, we'll see. But I think I'm going to have them use Google Classroom comments a little bit more because we are going to be physically distanced. So I'm going to try it out. And then maybe a little bit more report out, or, you know, what do you think about using Google Comments for that? For this, you know, for crowdsourcing, instead of, because I'm not going to have them writing on the board, right? I mean, it's a lot of movement. So, okay, so the third part then is my explain. So now we've gathered some vocabulary, prior knowledge. I know where we're going. I know what words maybe I may have to have added, and I may add my own words as we go through that as well in the comments. Teachers can comment with the students. Now I'm going to have them listen to me describe myself in this Screencastify video. Now this video is actually not a video of me describing myself in Spanish that the students are going to do. For today, I made it a little tutorial on how to use Google Classroom in the most effective way. So if you're new to Google Classroom, you may want to watch this video a little bit later. Did get a little away from me. It's like 20 minutes, but there's a lot of information in there that I did keep thinking, oh, that's important, that's important. So I suggest you go and check it out. It also gives a short tutorial at the very beginning for how to use Screencastify. Screencastify is a screen recording program that also has a webcam option. It's very simple to use. There's also a link to that in the other document for how to get your account started and where everything saves. The great thing about it is that it saves directly in Google Drive without you having to do anything, except for copy a link and paste it here like I have for my video. And so while they watch or after they watch, I'm asking them to fill out information in the Google form about what they've learned. So again, I could have them do this on paper, or I could have them do this in the document. But what the using Google form allows is that, I'm sorry to keep going back and forth. I told myself I wasn't going to do this. In part A, it says you'll be able to see a summary of correct and incorrect answers after we've all finished. They can actually see and collaborate with each other's answers by looking at them. How many students thought I said I was originally from Russia? Okay, that's not true. But the teachers that teach in my department, one's originally from Poland, one's originally from Mexico, one's originally from Romania, and then there's me, who's originally from the United States. So we created this so that everyone could use the same form, no matter who you are, and just make a copy for your students. Or we can see all the students that take Spanish 2, how many thought that their señora or their teacher was saying they're from this country or another. And it's kind of fun to see the results. It's another way to build collaboration in a digital or distance learning situation or blended, but you can also do it in the classroom. You don't have to recreate it every time, and you don't have to make copies, and you don't have to deal with formatting. It'll look the same no matter what, and it's an easy link. So when the students are done with these questions, some of them are multiple choice, some of them are short answer. If you've never used Google Forms before and you think it looks daunting, it is actually quite easy. It literally starts with you go to your Drive or go to Google Forms, you start a document, and it kind of just carries you through. So the students will answer the questions about me. Now, another reason for giving them a video to watch and a form to fill out is maybe they need to watch 3 times, and another student needs to watch 1. Well, that other student who watches 1 can go ahead and go on to part D, where now he's getting a little bit, he can elaborate on his ideals. He doesn't have to wait for the other students to finish, or the teacher doesn't have to continue to take up the airspace, right, in the room while the other students are still trying to go on to something else, right? I apologize, I missed something in part C here. In the comment on the right, it also discusses how you don't have to link your Google form. You can assign it directly in Google Classroom. There's multiple ways to do this. If you wanted to make different copies, for example, you would want to assign it differently. Okay, so the next thing that we use a lot of in our classes is Quizlet. So now I'm asking them to elaborate on their knowledge. I'm having them do that through study. So I told them, go to the Quizlet class link, not the link to the vocabulary list, in the resources section of Google Classroom. Notice I've not given them any link here because I want them to learn where everything is in Google Classroom. I'm going to finish the instructions and then I'll go. And I want them to pick a couple categories of vocabulary that they think they should review more to help them recall words they learned last year. Follow the prompts to sign in with Google using their Salle email and password. Now, this means they've never been to our Quizlet class. They're signing up right now in the middle of this lesson. Again, why? So they do not forget how to do it before they actually have to use it. And a Quizlet class, you do have to purchase it to be a teacher with classes with a class list, but I think it's $30 a year per teacher. Our department purchases it for the 4 of us, which you get a discount if you have multiple teachers, although Quizlet just use is free. But the benefit to the class is that you can follow their work. It's recorded in the class, and I can see what they've done, how long they've spent, what they finished, what they didn't, et cetera, et cetera. It's very cool. And if you're in a distance learning situation, it's great because telling them, please study your vocab is a wonderful thing. But that doesn't mean that they may do it. You could also use Edpuzzle. I've said over here in our comment, which in Edpuzzle, they're videos of any video that you find on YouTube, any video that you create yourself and upload, or any video that other teachers have already edited, and they have questions that you can add to it. They're timely, so you put it at the time in the video that you want it to occur, and students cannot advance unless they've answered it. So again, really great resource. It is a little more complicated to use. You have to get a handle on how to manipulate the video and how to sign the students up, how to look at their grades, etc. But once you do, it's really, really great way to deliver instruction or to elaborate, like I said here, on a topic. And students do like it. They do complain because they can't move on, but those are the ones who want to fast forward through the whole thing and pretend, right, that they learned everything. So let's go look at Quizlet really quick. So I've already opened the link here, but I've told them, go to Classroom, go to the resources and links section, and here it is, Quizlet class link. When I open it, it describes what that is, and it'll take me there. I've already opened it for time, and this is what the teacher view looks like, but this is also very similar to what the students see. So they will sign in using their Google login, and it will take them to this page after they've done that. And it shows the sets. Then I can look at the members who would be my students, and I can also see their progress, which ones they did, or how they worked on what. I've already populated these 4 here because these are the 4 sections of vocabulary that they could possibly review for this activity that are from Spanish 1. These are outdated. I wouldn't actually give them one with 85 terms or 108, but the other Spanish 1 teachers have those. I do not teach Spanish 1 currently, so I just put the old ones from when I did. So I'll give them time in class to go and work on this, or they would be using some of their time at home to do the same. So they've spent some time on vocabulary. You could, of course, like you all know, you could give them, you need to spend 20 minutes on the flashcards of this, right? You can give them more direct instructions. This is just kind of open-ended, and mine are going to do it in class, so I'm going to be watching that they're doing it. I don't need to give them timing. Last but not least, we have more elaborate and evaluate. And I'm going to have the students introduce themselves to their classmates in the Flipgrid video. Okay, so you're going to learn a little jargon for Flipgrid. Flipgrid video topic number 1, ¿Quién soy yo? Who am I? To access the topic, you're going to go to your Flipgrid class link in the resources section of Google Classroom and look for the topic titled the same. So again, I'm having them look for it. Instead of me linking everything for them, makes it a lot easier for me to be able to create lessons ahead of time and then create more detailed instructions for what they're going to actually do in these programs. It takes a little bit of the pressure off to have every single thing ready to go before you post this document, which is really just the organization of your traditional lesson plan. They'll do the same thing, follow the prompts to sign in with Google using their De La Salle email and password. Again, this is the first time they will be using Flipgrid this year. Then it gives them some secondary or some more instructions that they'll find in the Flipgrid topic, but it says part of the topic instructions ask you to respond to at least 2 of your classmates. So now again, I'm trying to foster collaboration that they would normally have in a small group setting in a class. I could, of course, if you're face-to-face, like it says here, you could have them present these in class. But I think I would still have them go and record their response and have them respond to each other on there. Because again, in a small group, the students would naturally be responding to short presentations from another group member. In a classroom situation, sometimes a teacher would say, does anyone have a comment or a question about the student's presentation? But we also see low participation in this. You may see a much higher participation in it if it is a virtual collaboration. And if you're not face-to-face, it's a great way to get students to collaborate. You may want to speak, of course, with them about appropriateness of responses, being nice, etc., and you'll want to go kind of check up on that correspondence. But it's really fun. So I'm going to take us now back to classwork in Google Classroom, and here's our Spanish 2 section 2 and 5 Flipgrid class link. I open it, it tells me again what it is, and then I click on the class. And this is the, oh great, wonderful. Sorry, I had a feeling. All right, we'll have to go the long way and I'll talk while we go the long way. So that link should work to take the students directly to their class. This is my class, right? So, or my classes, I should say. These are all from last year, so don't think I'm that wonderful that I'm that caught up for this year. So this is what Spanish 2 for me, or what it looks like to me. Here's all of the videos I've made for them. And actually, it's probably good this happened, because notice over on the left-hand side, there's pictures of me here. That means those are actually videos of me explaining the instructions and giving an example. I'm modeling. So again, I'm not there in front of them, so that's kind of hard to do. So I recorded instructions here. I did not record them for us because you're not going to watch them anyways. But I'm going to go to the student view really quick where it says, oh, it's still not working. That's interesting. Okay, well, I'm not going to the student view. Pretend that I went to the student view and it showed this. This is what it would show. And here is the name that I told them to go to. And these are the instructions that I've given them for what they need to create. I've given them some specific content and some specific objectives. And then I tell them their instructions for how to respond. I did give them an option to comment or respond in English because this is Spanish 2, and some students are still very shy, and it's like the second or third day of school. So I'd rather have them comment something good than not comment at all because it's in Spanish. So you can see there's 0 responses. And down here, the students have this button that just says record a response. I'm going to click on it. Hopefully it will participate. And here you can see it tells them that it has 3 minutes to record the video. You can click anywhere to dismiss this, and you get this lovely page. Now I'm recording myself on 2 webcams. You can add a sticky note here where the students can add text for what they want to talk about, and close it. And then I'm missing the tools down here, but I think it's because of the overuse of the webcam. But down here, it'll show you how to record, how they can add filters to their video, how they can add stickers, like a crown even, or funny hats. It is a really cool way for them to engage and show their personality with each other by creating something that could be graded. This I'd probably, I'd give them feedback on the Spanish that they've used. It does add rubrics as well. You can add a rubric to each topic that you create, which is an assignment or what you want them to do. And then, of course, you can see over here, there's multiple actions that you can use, okay? Duplicate it for another class. You can share it to Google Classroom directly, and then, of course, the edit. Again, I believe Connor's going to talk a little bit about this tomorrow. I hope I keep saying the right name. I looked it up, and then I realized that I didn't double check. Now I'm weary. I would use, this would be the end. Now, they're not going to record this in class, of course. I'm going to send them home. Thanks, Connor. He said I'm good. That's his name. I'm not going to have them record these in class. They're going to record them at home. So it is kind of an extended activity. Also, I'm going to be doing this in an 80-minute class period. You may not have those. Of course, this could span a couple different days. And based on the students' experience with technology, some of it may take longer or a shorter time if you're in person, or again, if they're doing this at home, this could be a 1 or 2 day assignment if they're doing this in distance or blended learning. If it's blended, you could do part of it in class and the other part at home. So it gives you a lot of options. But if my school I'm going to do this in person, but if they decide the day before we can't do an in-person instruction or something's wrong where I can't be there, my students can do this easily through Google Classroom by themselves. They don't need me in any way if I create that video ahead of time, which I will. It looks just like something that the lesson that I did last year. It just is a little bit different because I've added some programs, and all I had to do was think, how else can I do this instead of in person? I actually think it's more dynamic than it was last year. I think they're going to have a lot more fun, and I also think we're covering a lot more objectives than we have in the past. I think that's it. I believe I've gone over everything. And I realize there's a learning curve. This is my last plug for some of these programs. I realize there's a learning curve for these. It's not easy. It took me a long time to learn how to use all of these programs, but it doesn't take that long to learn how to use Microsoft Word or Google Docs. I certainly hope many of you are using Google tools because they're really great. I'm sure there's some proponents out there for other tools, but there's a lot of applications for all of them. And one thing I forgot, I didn't go over how to do a link here. I do talk about it in this Screencastify video, but for those of you who don't know, if I want to link text to say Google Form or to say Screencastify video, I'm going to pretend I want this. I go to the URL, I copy it, I go back to my document, I highlight the word that I want to hyperlink, there's a link, an insert link here. You can do Control K, like it says there, or you can press the little chain link at the top of your menu, paste. Notice down here too, other documents come up, and that's because Google has noticed that I have another Google Doc that has the word listen in it, and I've highlighted listen. This doesn't always work well, okay? Warning. Paste and then apply, and now listen would take you to there. It won't really take you there because you don't have access. If I want to remove the link or want to edit it, obviously I have options here. So I'm going to remove it because we don't want that there. Okay, I think I went over everything I planned. I think we're pretty much right on time. So do we have any questions? Does anyone want any clarification on anything? You can unmute yourself and ask me verbally if you want. Just take turns, or you can put it in the chat and I can answer that way. And it can be about anything, something from the tips that I've put, something about the lesson. This is the part of teaching that all teachers love. The waiting for participants. I'm not sure how long to wait here. So
yeah,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, any questions for Lindsey? Otherwise, we're certainly not going to keep you here. Somebody's typing.
This is Sophia. I don't necessarily have a question.
Okay.
I just wanted to say a quick thank you. I'm not a teacher. I'm a supervisor at one of our social service agencies. So I hopped on this to really see like what our other ministries are doing or what their plans are when the school year begins. So I just appreciate kind of seeing what you're doing as a teacher to just understand the teacher side of it. So when we're helping kids at home, I have a better understanding of like what the teachers are going through with the kind of kids that we're working with. So thank you.
Well, thank you for coming. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Lindsey.
What was that?
I was just saying thank you. I teach at San Miguel in DC, and the Edpuzzle was a little bit challenging for us. And I think the challenging part was to teach the students how to use some of these platforms, and and try to condense everything into one like hub page for them, because it was like Google Classroom and then go here, and like doing the hyperlinks and trying to teach them how to navigate. I think the first few weeks was very difficult. Right now, I think for us, the challenge will be the new incoming students, because most of them use Zoom and we use, Google Meets, and then like just using these platforms. So it's really great to see that, we're not alone, and, you trying to help us kind of navigate through it. I want to use a little bit more. I know some of my peers use a lot of the ones that you've mentioned. Flipgrid is a good one they like. Even some of the boys, even the video games, that they play, you can see the chats, they've used those. I'm not a techie person, but I've been trying to kind of go online and look at different things. So thank you for putting this together and trying to help us out, because we are going to go in person. We're going to do a hybrid model. So it's just a little difficult to try to balance the two of them. So, but thank you.
Thanks, Diana.
You're welcome. And it is difficult. But just like you said, trying to help them navigate the links and where to go in Google Classroom and all of that. I think that maybe some of what I spoke about today might actually help you. Creating resource links in Google Classroom that they become accustomed to through repetition and predictability, right? I just read about predictability in online learning and how important it is to follow the same patterns in Google Docs lessons or instructions versus just Google Classroom instructions and lessons might actually help. So good luck to you all and thank you for your input.
So, Lindsey, thank you very much. Just a reminder, too, that we have 4 more webinars on various aspects of distance instruction and learning. We have one tomorrow at 3 p.m. and also one on Thursday, and then again next Tuesday and Wednesday. These are being recorded and will be put on the DINA website relatively soon. And information on the upcoming webinars can be found on the DINA website. And really just best wishes to everyone. I have not been in the classroom for a long time, and I'm blown away in many ways, Lindsey, in terms of the amount of time that is clearly involved in creating these lessons and distance learning. So it's given me a much greater insight in terms of what our teachers are having to tackle going forward. There's a lot here, so I appreciate that. And thank you all for joining us, and we hope that you'll return in one of the another seminars and share with your friends that these are available here over the next 2 weeks. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Lindsey.
You're welcome.